Thank you very much indeed, Sally. Thank you for inviting me to be with you here this morning. And can I say, first of all, what a great pleasure and privilege it was to hear Mark, and so much stimulation from everything that you had to say. I'm delighted to be here this morning in a week that has seen quite a substantial reshuffle on Labour's front bench. I can also say I'm relieved still to be here with you this morning as planned several months ago. We certainly didn't take it for granted that that would be the case at the start of this week. I want, first of all, just to recognise the breadth and depth of experience in this room today. It's one of the biggest privileges in my role as the Shadow Minister for Children and Early Years, that I get to work alongside incredible people who are dedicated to making life better for children. That is certainly the case at PEDAL. Your work is recognised and respected across the world, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from some of you over dinner yesterday evening and at the policy breakfast this morning, and I want to say thank you for everything that you do. I thought in talking about a vision for childhood, I should share something of the background that I brought into this role, which is not as an expert in children and child development in any way. I represent the constituency of Dulwich and West Norwood in South East London. My constituency covers part of Lambeth and part of Southwark. It is one of the most diverse constituencies anywhere in the country, and it's a microcosm of London. I represent some of the most deprived communities anywhere in the country and some of the most expensive streets in South East London and everything in between that. I see in my constituency the many challenges that children and families face, the depth of the housing crisis, the impact of poverty, the toll of poor air quality, the devastation caused by domestic abuse. But I also see many really inspiring examples of individuals and organisations striving every day to do the best for our children. Whether that's the ways in which both of my local councils have protected budgets for children, even as more than 60% of their grant from local government has been stripped away, the establishment of open access mental health hubs for children, which we're seeing in both local authorities, the exceptional work that happens to reduce violence affecting young people, or the work in Lambeth through Lambeth's version of the Better Start initiative, the Lambeth Early Action Partnership, which has provided exceptional early years support for families in parts of the borough for much of the past decade. There are many examples to draw on. I was particularly struck by one sentence in Southwark Council's recent Ofsted inspection report, which read, "This borough knows its children well." That is a good place to start thinking about what our vision for childhood should be. Children should be seen, heard, listened to and known in all of the contexts in which decisions are being taken or services provided which affect them, and they must be prioritised. I'm also a parent to two daughters now aged 17 and 14. As a new mum in 2005 and in the earliest years of my daughters' lives, we were able to attend a local Shore Start centre, co-located with a maintained nursery which had been completely rebuilt. We were able to access speech and language therapy when my older daughter needed it by attending an open access drop-in clinic that was available every week. I still feel absolutely grateful for the support that I was able to rely on in those early years. And I see through the experiences of my constituents just how hard, impossible in some cases, it has been to sustain those same services in the political and economic environment that we have had for the past 13 years. But when it came to applying for a primary school place for our eldest daughter, we visited one of our local primary schools and were pretty horrified by what we found. The school seemed a chaotic and stressful environment. It wasn't immediately clear who was in charge. The buildings were very run down, and the school's results indicated that it wasn't a place where children were thriving in terms of education. It was really clear that that school just wasn't good enough, and we were pleased and relieved when we were offered a place at another local school for our daughter. But I didn't stop worrying about that school. It wasn't good enough for my daughter because it wasn't good enough for anyone's child. Shortly after my older daughter started school, I was elected as a local councillor for the ward in which that school was located. And I made it a real mission in that first term to improve things at that school. Working with my ward colleague, who's still a close colleague sitting in the front row, Andy Simmons, and other local parents, we persuaded council officers to intervene, to invest in a new reception building and to make some changes to the school's leadership. And it's now performing really well. It's a very popular primary school amongst both local children and parents. And it's delivering brilliantly, particularly for the most deprived children who live very close to it because it's located in the middle of a large council estate. Before I was elected to Parliament, I spent almost 20 years working as a town planner. That definitely doesn't give me expertise in child development or the early years, but it does mean that place is one of the lenses through which I see every aspect of my work. The services that children and families rely on will always be at their best when they are deeply rooted in the specific communities they are serving. And there are many factors that can make a place good or a bad place to live and grow as a child, which are nothing to do with children's services. The state of housing, the quality of parks and play spaces, whether the air is clean, whether the roads are safe, the range of sports and arts opportunities, and many other factors all have a bearing on whether children and their families are able to thrive. And I'm really clear that when we deliver places which are good for children, we deliver places which are good for everyone. Sadly, the evidence that we have is that over the last 13 years, this country has become a worse place to be a child. Whether it's in the shocking increase in child poverty or the closure of 1,300 Sure Start centres across the country, the battles facing parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities, the decline in our children's mental health and well-being, the drop in participation in sports, the decimation of art subjects being taught in our schools. We don't have in the UK a proper childcare system, yet parents in England pay for the most expensive childcare in Europe. And all of that is before we take into account the impacts of the pandemic and the wider drop in living standards as a result of the cost of living crisis, which have had a profound impact on the daily lives of children. I'm really proud that when we were last in government, Labour put children at the very heart of our programme for government, setting up Sure Start centres across the country, investing in school buildings and facilities and play equipment, improving school food, as well as wider measures such as the introduction of the national minimum wage, which helped to lift 1 million children out of poverty. Be in no doubt, Labour will put children at the heart of our programme for government again. Our vision is for our country once again to be a place where every child can thrive. Keir Starmer has begun to set out Labour's vision for our country in a series of 5 missions. The language of missions speaks to the need for our country, for deep, sustained transformation and rebuilding. We will build an early years education and childcare system which supports children to learn and develop, as well as enabling parents to work, from the end of parental leave to the end of primary school. We will start this transformation with fully funded breakfast clubs in every primary school in England so that no child has to start the school day hungry, and there are opportunities to provide additional learning support, curriculum enrichment and other interventions while enabling parents to get to work. We will focus relentlessly on quality in early years education. That means first and foremost having a plan for the early years workforce so that the highly skilled staff who work with our youngest children are properly recognised and valued and can progress and make a career in early years education. We will bolster the experience available in the early years so that additional needs are identified earlier and support is accessible when it is needed, particularly with speech and language development. We all know that good mental health and well-being is essential for children to access education and other opportunities which are there to help them fulfil their potential. We will fund a mental health professional in every secondary school in the country and establish open access mental health hubs for young people in every community. By charging VAT on private school fees, we will fund thousands more teachers in our schools, combined with a review of the curriculum to ensure that our children are being taught the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in the modern world. This will ensure that children have access to the fullest range of opportunities at school, including sport and the creative arts, wherever they live. It will also mean that schools have the right resources to support children with special educational needs and disabilities in the mainstream, where this is appropriate for the child, and we will work to boost the knowledge and skills of teachers and support staff on how best to support children with SEND needs in an inclusive way. When I think about what makes for a good childhood, I hold those children whose childhoods have been marred by adverse childhood experiences at the top of my mind. Children's social care is being stretched to breaking point across the country, with far too many looked after children placed far from home in unsuitable accommodation, having to move far too frequently with insufficient support to help them sustain positive, supportive, stable relationships with their wider network of family, friends and trusted adults. This government has been far too complacent about children's social care, content to allow a postcode lottery on the quality of children's services across the country, content to allow half of all children's services departments to languish with inadequate or requires improvement ratings from Ofsted, content to allow private providers of children's homes and foster placements to rake in exorbitant profits, content to allow the outcomes for care leavers and care experienced people to deteriorate even further, which is a shameful context. The government has a grave responsibility to children who have a corporate parent, and this government simply hasn't taken that responsibility seriously enough. Labour will work to rebuild our children's social care system, drawing on good practice from the best local authorities, those that really know their children well, keep them close and provide safe, caring and stable support. And we will work to ensure that the disadvantage and discrimination that care leavers and care experienced people face is addressed. There are many factors that contribute to a good childhood, which are not the direct responsibility of the Department for Education, but make a profound difference to the experience of children as they grow up. Tackling the housing crisis, reducing child poverty, cleaning up the air, addressing climate change. These issues and many more mean that it is important that childhood is a lens through which all government policy is considered. Should Labour be lucky enough to win a majority of seats in the House of Commons at the next general election and form a Labour government, and we are working every day to that end at the moment, there will be so much to do. Almost every area of our public services are broken and our economy is in a perilous state. The measures that we have announced so far signal our intent, the first steps, the things that we will know we can do right away. But they are not the limit of our ambition for our country's children. We will work with experts, professionals, parents, and children and young people themselves to rebuild our country with ambition for our children at the heart of everything we do.